Did you know that as it stands right now today, about 73% of Americans' number one concern about our country, especially moving into this election coming up in about a month from now, is the jobs market and the economy, guys. This is the overwhelming thing that pretty much everyone is concerned about. Most people are going to be voting based on this. People's livelihoods and businesses are being affected by this. So you better believe it's very important that we get the information right and we know what's happening in the economy, regardless of numbers that we might get that are unrealistic or possibly even fake, just like the jobs report we got a couple of days ago. Everybody celebrated this jobs report, guys. It completely smashed expectations. You know, the expectations was there was going to be 147,000 new jobs created in September and ended up being 254,000. Pretty much no one saw that coming. But one thing we know from the past and other things that we've talked about here on the channel is that these jobs numbers are never actually the real number. They always get revised down. In fact, we had a giant revision just about a month and a half ago from all the way back to the beginning of the year where they said, oh, in fact, we actually created 818,000 less jobs than we initially thought. You have to sit and ask yourself, do you actually believe this jobs report? Because we also saw in this same report that the unemployment fell to 4.1%, down from 4.2%. The expectation was that it was just not going to move. Naturally, the stock market and the economists, everybody who pays attention to this stuff, had a field day when this information comes out. And of course, it makes the current Biden administration look amazing, right? But there is a problem because the Fed just cut rates by 50 basis points just a couple weeks ago. All right, and part of the reason they did that, in fact, a large part of the reason they did that, according to them, was because of concerns over a weakening labor market. In fact, Jerome Powell himself even said that inflation isn't even so much the worry anymore. We're more concerned about the weakening labor market. And then boom, just a couple weeks later, we get this smashing it out of the ballpark jobs report that nobody expected. Here we have a house for sale for a little over $8.7 million, 6 bedrooms, 6.5 bathrooms, and it's another flipper, of course, bought back in 2021 for $7.5 million, trying to squeeze an extra $1.2 million out of it now. Probably isn't going to happen. But take a look at this, guys. This house has literally seen practically no appreciation since the last housing market downturn in 2008 when this house sold for $7.7 million back then. So really this area of California, if you ask me, has peaked. Like the prices really don't have room to go up from here because probably no one's willing to pay it and or can afford it. On top of that, you got a property tax bill here sitting at close to $100,000 a year for this house. This brings us back to the question that I asked when I made this video about the Fed rate cut shortly after it happened is, why is the Fed cutting rates, especially so aggressively to begin with, if there's nothing to worry about, guys? Because according to this jobs report and the most recent unemployment numbers, there should be nothing to worry about. There should have never even been a rate cut, first of all, but also, you know, the July and August jobs numbers were actually just revised up with 72,000 more jobs added to the economy than they initially thought. And the jobs numbers usually always get revised down. So either something extremely suspicious is going on right now, or the Fed made a huge mistake and the economy really is great and they should have just kept the interest rates higher or maybe even kept raising them because clearly it hasn't been enough to slow things down to the point that they were hoping for. And we know that the core inflation number that they love to look at is still sitting at a hefty 2.7%, which is a lot closer than 3% than the 2% that they've been promising over the past couple of years. But I'm not going to get too much in the weeds on this, but when you look at the actual jobs that were created, about 86% of the new jobs are actually government jobs. And this is where the suspicion part of it comes in, if you ask me, because clearly there is an election coming up, guys. People will do just about anything in order to help their team win or get reelected or whatever. This is absolutely perfect timing to get a jobs report like this to come in to help win an election, because it's really going to be the last report that comes out before the election. We are going to get another one on November 1st, just days before the election. But a lot of people would have already voted by then, even me. Like, I'm an early voter. I usually don't wait till election day to vote. I usually vote by mail. But here's some of the suspicious numbers we got to look at. Employment in government went up 31,000 jobs, right? Then you have employment in social assistance increased by 27,000 jobs in September. You had 45,000 healthcare jobs added in September. Vast majority of all those jobs I just mentioned are all government related, guys, because even though healthcare isn't directly a government job, healthcare industry is largely subsidized by government. Okay, and then you add in the employment in the government, and then you also add in the social assistance. Those are all government jobs. The only outlier here in this jobs report that comes as a major shocker and surprise, really, to me anyways, is the food services. You know, that went up by 69,000 jobs in September. And the average monthly is usually only 14,000. Which is kind of suspicious right now, considering so many restaurants, especially fast food restaurants, are trying to phase out their employees with kiosks and AI and outsourcing the drive-through, all sorts of things like that. And the restaurant business in general isn't even doing too great because of how bad the economy is. So then why would there be so many new restaurant jobs in September? Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. The reason I wanted to bring all this up is because it's your turn. Like, you really have to decide what you believe, guys. Do you believe this extraordinary report that we just got, or do you believe what typically happens and that the reports that we get are not nearly as great as they first initially seem once they get revised down in the future and we end up having problems? Because once again, if the Fed saw no problems in the economy and they thought everything was going strong, they would have zero reason to cut interest rates. But they already started off with a big one, and now people are trying to guess and wonder what's going to come at the next meeting in November. Are they going to cut again? Are they going to hold steady? Is it going to be another 50 basis points, another 25? We don't know. But based on this information, they should probably do nothing, right? Of course, there's going to be one more jobs report come out before their next meeting, and that's going to influence things as well. But already, the Fed looks ridiculous for making this big rate cut seemingly for nothing. Another thing that we are continually seeing happen ever since the Fed rate cut over 2 weeks ago is mortgage rates continue to go up. In fact, yesterday they had their highest jump in one day since they had the Fed rate cut, guys. It went up over 25 basis points in just one day. And as of me shooting this video, the average rate for a 30-year mortgage is sitting at 6.5%. You know, when the Fed first started cutting rates, it was almost down to 6%. And it's been going nowhere but up since then. This is a clear indicator that the bond market is still screaming that inflation is a problem and it's going to continue to be a problem into the future. And the only thing that's going to save the housing market if prices don't continue to come down is much lower interest rates, which is seemingly not going to happen anytime soon. So here's the thing, guys. In order for mortgage rates to move meaningfully lower than they are right now, investors are going to need to see much worse economic news moving forward. So in other words, the only way you're going to see low mortgage rates again is if we are in a very bad economy. That's it. That's the only way it's going to happen. And right now, everything is in this weird limbo position where things are happening that kind of no one predicted. No one predicted that we would see this big jobs report come out like it did. Nobody predicted that mortgage rates would continue to go up after a Fed rate cut, and everything seems to be just happening that wasn't supposed to happen. Even the Mortgage Bankers Association, they have revised their long-term mortgage rate outlook to being where they're basically going to kind of stay in still. We're going to see mortgage rates remain kind of high like they are now for the foreseeable future because of this situation now. So they're predicting that over the next 12 months, they're going to remain in the 6% range. So basically, probably between what it is now at 6.5% and 6%. And that's probably regardless if we get more Fed rate cuts, guys, because honestly, the more Fed rate cuts we get at this point, the higher mortgage rates may actually go because the bond market doesn't believe that the Fed has actually squashed inflation. And I think that's how most of us feel, as well as just a regular consumer living and buying things in this economy. Most people realize that all the inflation we got is permanent. There's things that are still getting more expensive, although not by the degree it was during the last few years, but still, tell me what's getting significantly more affordable right now. We do see housing prices coming down in many areas across the country, and they are meaningful reductions in prices, but the reality is they still have a long way to go. The reality is mortgage rates are still a full percentage point lower than they were just a year ago, but the sales have fallen off so much since then, it doesn't really matter. So with this new report that just came out, honestly, I don't see the housing market having any sort of improvement anytime soon, guys. I mean, the one thing we can count on is prices continue to come down as more sellers get desperate or tired of waiting or need to sell or realize that the interest rate situation isn't going to improve anytime soon. That's definitely going to help people looking for a house right now, but don't expect mortgage rates to meaningfully go down anytime soon. One of my viewers sent me this funny picture I want to share with you guys here. For a while, everybody had that stupid chant about defund the police. Well, how about this one? Defund the HOA. So many people are getting sick of being treated poorly by HOAs and special assessments and people that have nothing better to do besides walk around and give people citations and tell you how many rules you're breaking every day. And I gotta admit, it would be nice if this would happen, if all the HOAs in the world would just go away and somehow we could make that happen, that'd be great. But I think it's gonna take more than a sign in the yard, but I thought it was funny. Now here's something to think about. You have auto dealers here in California that are restricting the sale of diesel-powered trucks in order to meet the state's EV rules. According to California's Advanced Clean Fleets rule, this regulation says that zero-emission trucks must be a growing share of semi-fleet truck sales. And California imposes a similar mandate for passenger cars, but the trouble is truckers aren't buying electric big rigs because they can't afford them, even with a $40,000 federal tax credit. So they don't just want you to drive an electric car here in California, they also want semi-truck drivers to drive electric big rigs, guys. And check out this. This is the most ridiculous part of all of this. Electric trucks cost twice as much as diesel-powered rigs, and they have a limited driving range of about 150 miles on average, whereas the diesel rig can get anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 miles on one tank of gas, guys. And on top of that, there's almost nowhere to charge your huge electric semi anywhere, but they want you to pay twice as much for it, only get 150 miles on a charge, and somehow you're supposed to make that work for your trucking business. As it stands right now, California dealers are restricted from selling a diesel truck unless they sell a ZEV truck. So, surprise, surprise, the semi-truck sales are down 50% year over year as of June of 2024, and a lot of truckers are driving older trucks for longer rather than buying new diesel powered ones because they can't over here. And on top of that, the older trucks push more pollution into the air. So once again, how does that make any sense? Now, if I were a trucker in California, the first thing I would do is hop over the state line and just buy a brand new truck in a different state where I can still buy one. That'd be the most obvious solution to this. But the fact that people even have to do that is an outrage. Unless something changes big time with the laws they have here in California, with these mandates on the electric vehicles and all these emissions mandates that they have here, you're gonna see a bunch of people going out of business because of this, including dealerships, because they can't sell the trucks, because the dealerships are losing money on the sales, but also they incur monthly interest penalties on an unsold truck. So the more inventory they have of these trucks sitting on their lots that aren't selling, it's like a compounding effect. They're not making the sale and they have to pay interest on that vehicle. And then when you break it down to the trucker level, people who actually transport the goods, they're going to be going out of business because they can't sustain off of a system like this. So how is the state with the largest economy in the country supposedly going to operate on this whole electric big rig system where you can't get any range and no one can afford the trucks, and maybe all the truck drivers leave or go somewhere else because of this? I mean, honestly, guys, like every year I come here, I spend time here, I love being here, But when I read about stuff like this, it still makes me happy that I'm not like a resident and I don't live here full time or anything like that. Just visiting a few months out of the year, I think suffices when I read this stuff, because I feel like eventually here in California, they're going to have to correct a lot of these big mistakes that they've made and reverse a lot of these terrible policies that just don't make any sense in order to keep more businesses here, in order to encourage more people to start businesses, in order to make sure their entire, shipping network and infrastructure doesn't collapse because of this ridiculous stuff. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.